The lower ranking states may need to rapidly adopt public-private partnership, that's PPP models, in delivering public goods due to their relatively poorer credit worthiness. I'm trying to quote from what you stated now. So is this really a bad situation, Mr. Bolarinwa?
Yeah, so it's that bad because like the table has shown you, right? If you remove the federal allocation from this state as it stands, they might cease to exist, right? So which is because their level of insolvency is so high, which is the debt they have is more than what they are currently making or what they are planning to make in some years to come. So basically, the advice has been for them to slow down, on this idea of getting more debt. Why? Because you have calculated what the IGR will be. You have calculated everything they can get in taxes. You've calculated everything they can get in revenue for the fiscal year, and basically the numbers are not good. Right, and it's important that we put it out there for them to have an understanding of what the challenges or what the dangers that lie ahead might be, or would be, or could be, because at the end of the day, yes, some of them could get, debt forgiveness, but that's not the order of the day right now. You have to pay. And
we talk about negotiating on new terms. I recall we having debt forgiveness in 2005. Do you actually see that happening again?
So that would entirely determine on the people that has borrowed this money. I know we've gotten a lot of loans from the World Bank, we've gotten a lot of loans from the Chinese government. So it really, really depends on, and I see that we've even failed some repayment levels that we're supposed to do. And like I said, it would determine, it would be based on how the new government or the new administration is able to negotiate these terms, or to even to negotiate some other levels of favors. And but like I said, it's not, I can't say I see it happening or I do not see it happening, right?
Now, in the words of Gary Adams, an Irish Republican politician, he once said, "One man's transparency is another's humiliation." I like that one. Our next quote is from Mahatma Gandhi, or Mahatma Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He was an Indian lawyer, anti-colonial nationalist, and political ethics who employed non-violent resistance to lead the successful campaign for India's independence from British rule. He once said, "Truth never damages a cause that is just." Absolutely spot on. All right, let's see how all of this could relate to what we'll be discussing tonight. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, Budget is a Nigerian civic organization that applies technology for citizen engagement with institutional improvement to facilitate societal change. Budget, as a civic organization, is driven to make the Nigerian budget and public data more comprehensible and accessible across every literacy span. Budget innovation within the public sphere comes with the creative use of government data by either presenting this in simple tweets, interactive formats, or infographic displays. Our primary goal, according to them, is to use technology to intersect civic engagement and institutional reforms. So, my guest on the show tonight is AG Lead, Open Government and Institutional Partnership Budget Foundation. His name is Iyanu Bolarinwa, and we will be discussing on the activities they have been carrying out and so many other interesting reports that they were able to dig out in their 2022 State of State. But that is after this timeout. Join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Tonight, our guest on the show is Iyanu Bolarinwa. He is the acting lead, Open Government and Institutional Partnership, Budget Foundation. It's great to have you on the show today, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me this evening. It's good to join you. And as I was speaking about budget, work for the past 10 years plus now, and the challenges, the successes, they're quite numerous. And the organization as it stands today is regarded as one of the organizations that allows Nigerians to have an understanding of what is going on in their government, and also to be able to have the right knowledge to speak to the government. So basically, that's what we do, and we do that with different technologies. We do that with media, and also we do that with ensuring that we have partnership with different stakeholders across board.
All right, so in your 2022 State of State report, you indicated that states that rank higher on Index A, I suppose you mean states such as Lagos, Rivers, Kaduna, Ebonyi, and Jigawa, although you had other states that were listed. According to that report, they have comparatively limited dependence on federally distributed revenue for their operations and thus have greater viability if they were to theoretically exist as an independent entity. But then in the contrast, you said that states that rank lower on Index A, that's the last five being Benue, Taraba, Adamawa, Yobe, and Bayelsa, they either need to work harder on growing their internally generated revenue, considering the size of their operating expenses, or work on proning their operating expenses. The lower ranking states, according to you, also have more work to do to improve their business enabling environment and enhance their domestic resources or resource mobilization capacity. Now, first, can you confirm that this is exactly what the report represents?
All right, so for us, that report represents the realities, and also looking at the micro and macroeconomics of each of these states. And what we have done basically is to also ensure that not just knocking the state government on the head. What we're trying to do is to also ensure that these states have some level of sustainability, in each fiscal year. And don't also forget that most of the time, when you appear on a particular level of the table, we have taken into consideration some items that we have calculated in the state. Especially, we've looked at your capital expenditure, we've looked at your current expenditure, we've looked at the human development index of your state, and all of among other things. And yes, for us, what we also see is to also ensure that we give these states an opportunity to be able to even survive. We want to look at, okay, how does this state survive if we stop the inflow of the federal allocation resources, which is called the FAC. How does this state survive? So we are priming the states to look at the resources that their state have. What can they sell to the country? What can they sell outside the country? And also, what can they be able to give out to that brings value back to their state? So we are encouraging everybody to increase their internally generated revenue, keep their current expenditure very low, and also invest very well in capital. In capital. If you look at Rivers State, for example, capital investment was very on the high side. And if you look at states that rank an high on the part of the table as well, you will notice that our capital investments were very high. So we also understand that the development of a state, shows in how much investment has been done in the capital infrastructure of the state. And for us, we want to see, where people and businesses are surviving in this state, and that will continue to impact on their level or on the table.
But then some people are surprised at the fact that some states have, like Ebonyi, Jigawa, made it to the top 5. But states like Benue, which is the food basket of the nation, and then they are actually known for their agricultural prowess, and state like Bayelsa, which is the proverbial goose that lays the golden egg, are at the end of the pile. How so?
So, like I said, I mean, it's not everything I've said earlier on. You still pick points from there, which is basically investing in capital infrastructures, right? Because that speaks so much on the economy of the state. Because when you are spending on capital infrastructures, you are boosting the economy of your state. Why? Because people are put to work. Businesses are selling to the government for the materials they're going to use. And also, and I'm putting it in a very, very, contextual point where everybody can understand what I'm trying to say. Basically, when you improve the capital spending or capital infrastructure of your state, you are ensuring that your state does not go into recession. You are ensuring that there's economic activities in your state, and that is why those states are up there, because they saw the need to improve on the capital infrastructure of their state.
And now I recall that the Bayelsa government dismissed the 2022 Fiscal Sustainability Report on Nigerian State released by your organization. The Bayelsa government, in a statement released by Mr. Maxwell Ebibai, who is the Commissioner for Finance, questioned the report and as he faulted the methodology used to arrive at the rankings and pointed out that it did not reflect the current financial standing of the state. The commissioner said that the report were merely a repeat of 2021 rankings. How would you respond to that? Because Nigerians would like to be certain of the credibility of the report for the sake of reuse or probably research purposes.
All right, so for us, when we took our lessons from 2020, 2021, before we did the last fiscal ranking, which is 2022, we ensured that all commissioners for finance, all commissioners for budget were all called into meetings where we actually verify their figures, which is, can you verify for us, this is your figure for your budget, this is your figure for your capital expenditure, this is your figure for your recurrent expenditure, this is your figures for your debt, both domestic and foreign debt. So for us, we ensured that we had conversations even before the ranking was done, and the methodologies were very, very plain, for everybody to see. Because at the end of the day, for us, we were able to ensure that all representatives, even from the NGF, which is the Nigerian Governance Forum, were all on the same page, understanding our methodologies. Even we put it out there. So for us, it was not something we just sat back in the office on desk research to actually just put out numbers, put out figures, that we've drawn up from our methodologies. It was basically us ensuring that we carry all the stakeholders along, to make sure that our reports are viable and also verifiable, even in presenting the fact. Yes, sometimes when results come out, states that are expected that they should perform very highly, sometimes they might not see themselves in that particular position due to one index or another, which is pulling them down. And we put it out there, and the ideology of putting this index out there is for them to see how they can improve on these things, so that when the next ranking is done, they are very much on a very favorable space, as much as they want to be for the particular state in question.
All right, let's go ahead with the rankings. Now, states that rank higher on Index A1, like Jigawa, Borno, Katsina, Ekiti, and Sokoto, have been able to, according to you, have been able to significantly grow their internally generated revenue year on year and are progressively reducing their over-reliance on federal transfers. But contrarily, the states that rank low on this index, such as Kaduna, Akwa Ibom, Kogi, Anambra and Kebbi, have had either a negative or poor growth in their IGR and thus remain heavily dependent on federally distributed revenue to implement their budgets. So does this mean that some of these states are doing well monthly, but they're doing badly yearly, or what? Help us make better meaning of this. We're trying to get better meaning of that.
On a major scale. All right, so for us, we try to look at how much you are running when it comes to your own government, right? Basically, we want to understand if your fiscal responsibility, right, matches what you are earning, right? And what I mean by that is if you are burning too much in respect to what you are earning, you're going to find yourself in serious problems, right? So, for example, there are states that are making so much in internal revenue and they're also spending so much, when it comes to their expenses, in the state. So basically, we encourage people to, or encourage states to also have, perfect plans in place that would allow them not to burn as much as what they are making, in the same space of time. We're encouraging the culture of savings so that at the end of the day, the state is also on a level of buoyancy and doesn't have to necessarily go into getting a lot of debt at the end of the fiscal year.
All right, let's go to a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Iyanu Bolarinwa. I'll see you after this time out. All right, welcome back. So now, before we went on that break, sorry, our connections are really failing us, but then we can still continue this conversation. Now, you said, according to the report, you also stated that states that rank higher on Index C, such as Jigawa, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Nasarawa, and Bayelsa, have more comparatively fiscal bandwidth to borrow more due to their comparatively sustainable debt profiles, which is determined by their debt to revenue ratio, and then debt to GDP ratio, and also debt service to revenue ratio, and personal cost to revenue ratio. Now, in contrast, states that rank lower on Index C, such as Ekiti, Cross River, Ogun, Imo, and Osun, and then Plateau State, they need to check their appetite for acquisition of more debt, as they appear to be more either above or very close to the solvency threshold for debt to revenue ratio, or debt to GDP ratio, or even debt service to revenue ratio, and also personal cost to revenue ratio. The lower ranking states may need to rapidly adopt public-private partnership, that's PPP models, in delivering public goods due to their relatively poorer credit worthiness. I'm trying to quote from what you stated now. So is this really a bad situation, Mr. Bolarinwa?
Yeah, so is that bad? Because like the table has shown you, right? If you remove the federal allocation from this state as it stands, they might cease to exist, right? So which is because their level of insolvency is so high, which is the debt they have is more than what they are currently making or what they are planning to make in some years to come. So basically, the advice has been for them to slow down, on this idea of getting more debt. Why? Because you have calculated what the IGR will be. You have calculated everything they can get in taxes. You've calculated everything they can get in revenue for the fiscal year, and basically the numbers are not good. Right, and it's important that we put it out there for them to have an understanding of what the challenges or what the dangers that lie ahead might be, or would be, or could be, because at the end of the day, yes, some of them could get, debt forgiveness, but that's not the order of the day right now. You have to pay, and most of the time, debt servicing alone can erode all your revenue, and that's the case of Nigeria at the moment. We are using 96% of our revenue to service debt, and 4% is not even enough to pay the current expenditure or do anything important on capital expenditure, right? So basically, we still have to borrow more to be able to actually pay for the current expenditure. We still need to borrow more to service the debt that we have. We still need to borrow more to actually also take care of capital expenditure if we want to have any at all. So we are being, very careful for this state, or we are, putting it out there for this state to have an understanding of what they could become if care is not taken as to appetite of borrowing more and more, in the name of the state. So, and also, don't also forget that sometimes most of these states, they borrow in FX, which is the borrowing, in dollars or sometimes in other currencies, that might also put more strain on their economy or on their revenue when they are trying to repay back these borrowings. Why? Because you have to now pay extra because the level of dangling foreign exchange in the country, right? Which always most times are not favorable for the states when they are trying to pay back the loans. And don't forget, most of the time these loans are interest loans. They accrue interest in the number of time, and you have to pay back both the interest and the capital. So we are just making sure that these states have an understanding of the dangers ahead of them if care is not taken.
Now, I hear you talk about Nigeria, so I'm going to ask you two questions and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. Now, with the recent elections, either the national or the gubernatorial elections, the state assembly elections, even though some states have their governors returning back, and some have new governors and representatives, do you think that will help in any way at all? And probably your next report might actually have good reports on them, especially those that are sitting at the bottom of the pile. Same for the presidential elections. In the next few days, weeks, if all things being settled, we should be having a new administration being sworn in, even though it's the same party, like people would say. Will that make significant difference in the state of Nigeria's debt profile?
So for me, and I would like to present my own ideologies now, which is also a reflection of the work I've done so far in studying the debt profile of the country. It's not going to have so much significant difference in the debt profile of the country. It's going to be a continuation of what we already have, right? Because by the time we get there, some of these states, some of the new administration that will be sworn in will realize that this state or the government or the federal government is not as rich as they thought, because we have so much debt, in trillions, that has been acquired for the country or for this state before even the new administration is sworn in. So it becomes a responsibility for the new administration to think about how are we going to pay off this debt. Are there going to be debt restructuring? Are there going to be debt forgiveness? Are there going to be relief in one way or another, right? So that would also be a very good caution to how the new administration is able to negotiate. It's able to speak to the debtors. Is able to speak to the debtors. So for us, we are going to all just encourage them to slow down on borrowings, find a way that even the borrowings that we already have are utilized in a way that they can pay off themselves. And that's where we are. We've put our mantra that it doesn't make sense for us to continue borrowing for consumptions. We should look at how we can borrow for production so that this enterprise can pay back the debt, in the number of years that has been given to us to repay this debt. So, like I said, it's going to really, be a skill or a talent of each of these administrations to determine how they are able to negotiate on new terms, or they are able to negotiate on payment of this existing debt.
Now, if you talk about negotiating on new terms, I recall we having debt forgiveness in 2005. Do you actually see that happening again?
So that would entirely determine on the people that has borrowed us this money. I know we've gotten a lot of loans from the World Bank. We've gotten a lot of loans from the Chinese government. So it will really depend on, and I see that we've even failed some repayment levels that we're supposed to do. And like I said, it would determine. It would be based on how the new government or the new administration is able to renegotiate these terms, or to even to negotiate some other levels of favors. And but like I said, it's not, I can't say I see it happening or I do not see it happening, right?
All right, so because you mentioned World Bank,
to get out of this debt.
All right, so Because you mentioned World Bank, few days ago, the World Bank reported that Nigeria spent 93.3% of revenue on debt servicing in 2022 from 83.2% in 2021, which shows how the fiscal deficit has worsened the nation's public debt stock. Does this figure actually give you cause for concerns?
Yeah, they are very big cause of concerns because if you look at it, it means that we are almost using all our own revenue to pay debt, right? And that does not give us the ability to even think of how do we want to utilize what we have. What do we want to sell to the world? What can we invest in to sell to the world so that we can get some foreign exchange? Yes, we have crude oil, but you would also agree with me that we've had several challenges with that in some few months. And you would also agree with me that the fluctuations that we've had in the global market immediately after COVID-19 has also, put us in a precarious position as to revenues from oil. But like I said, we have to understand that at this point in time, Nigeria, as it stands, needs to be able to think of what other things it can sell to the world for us to be able to get, more revenue that could also soften the pressure we have on repaying debt with our currently generated revenues.
All right, so now thinking of other things that we can sell to help us pay off all these debts. I know that most of the countries are actually going away from fossil fuel and embracing renewable energy. So probably sometime later on I can't actually give dates or time, but then there will be a time when the global market might not be needing what we have to sell in terms of fuel. So what else can we actually look onto? Can we think of any non-oil sector that we can look up to? I told someone about agriculture, and then the person reminded me of insecurity and all. So aside all of that, what else can we actually sell aside fuel?
All right, so Nigeria is blessed, and you'll be shocked that Ukraine is one producing the highest number of wheat out there. When Russia started the war with Ukraine, a lot of organizations, even in Nigeria, started to panic, and I started to wonder. So with the number of arable lands that we have, we can still talk about how we would be able to have wheat for ourselves. We had problems with animal feed. So the question is, what happened to the agricultural sector that we had before the discovery of oil, right? So the idea is that we need to be able to understand that we can go back to the agricultural ways. Kenya produces cotton and tea, right? Ghana exports flowers. Right, Kenya also exports flowers. So when you look at that, you see that there's a lot of revenue to be made in agriculture, right? And also we have other natural mineral resources. We have gold in Zamfara, we have gold in Osun State, right? That can be sold to the world. There are a lot of other things that we can sell to the world. So the whole thing we need is to see how we can restructure the ways at which these things can be, can be on the largest scale that can be sold to the world.
I hear you say we have gold in Zamfara, and then you call some other states. Then how will you actually advise federal government, especially the state governments and local government, on fiscal efficiency and method by which their revenue can be increased? For some of the states that you already mentioned, that even in your reports, that states that they are supposed to be at the top with regards to the IGR, states that should be competing globally in terms of what they generate from their coffers, like Abia State with so many international markets, and international markets with international standard that they have. And then you have Benue State, you have Bayelsa, you have Zamfara, like you also mentioned, just to mention a few. Now, how best would you advise this state to creatively indulge in activities that will increase their IGR, just as you have in some other states that are actually doing good, other than tax? Because when you talk about these things, the next thing they tell you is widen your tax nets. Are there other streams of income available?
Yeah, so the first thing is we need to look at what is stopping other streams of income. It's easy to think of streams of income, from policy angle or from policy levels, but we also need to look at what are the problems, what are the challenges that these states currently face. And number one is we have to resolve the problem of insecurity, right? Because without proper security, we can't even think of increasing our internally generated revenue. Foreign direct investments will not come into the country or into this state because investors do not have an idea of making sure that they are secure or they are safe in the state which they operate. So we must first resolve the problem of insecurity, because this is the major thing that would help us, have foreign direct investment that can also go ahead to increase the investment in the state or that we are talking about. So basically, the first thing we need to do is to ensure that insecurity is resolved. I know the government is really trying its best, maybe not just what we expect to see, but then we must also, as stakeholders, continue to advocate for a safe and a conducive environment for investors to actually operate in our country and in the states that we have mentioned so far.
All right. Let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Iyanu Bolarinwa. I will see you after this time out. Join us again. At some point, you hear that it's over 200 million. Some point you hear that it's 100 million. Some point 205 million. But is this actually a good step in the right direction? Are we census ready? 2023 census ready?
So that question is dicey, right? Is the country census ready? Yes, the country census ready. But the question is this the right time? No, because it's it's more like a rushed affair now. The present government has less than 50 days to the end of his tenure, right? Which means that whatever you're doing right now might carry some level of suspicion from the people. You understand? And also people are asking, how do you intend to do this in a way that it carries the whole country in the same spectrum, right? But the response that we've seen has not really commensurate with the level of preparedness that the National Population Census has said they have put into place.
If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you actually just joined us, you missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As our guest on the show tonight is Iyanu Bolarinwa. He is the acting lead, Open Government and Institutional Partnership, Budget Foundation. It's great to still have you on the show today, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me once again.
All right, so now let's talk about accountability, transparency, and tracking of following the money. With your new technology that your organization launched a few months ago, that's govspend.ng, an online platform that enables Nigerians monitor how the federal government is spending its money in real time. So tell us, after 1 year, I'm sure that that's enough time to test for errors and efficiency. How's it coming along? Or better ask, how far so far?
All right, so thank you very much, and we have done so much with that platform, and some other civil society organizations are also using the information from that platform. So for us, it's not just a platform for budget; it's a platform for all stakeholders, all Nigerian citizens, everybody who is very much interested in understanding how the government is spending their resources, right? So what the platform is supposed to do is to be able to record in real terms how much money is the government spending when it comes to projects in the country, right? And we record projects of 5 million naira above and daily payment, on the platform to both individuals and both into corporate accounts. And we also record by ministries, departments, and agencies, right? Trying to understand what ministries are spending money on, try to understand what department of the government are spending money on, and also what the agencies of the government are spending money on. And for us, this has given us an opportunity to be able to explain to Nigerians and to also give a very good, ideology to Nigerians on the ideas of how the government is spending your money, and also to give into a big perspective of how much is going to private or personal pockets. When it comes to procurement of projects, and also procurement of items for the government. And for us, sometimes we've seen some errors, we've raised some advocacy messages, and this is a very good conversation, because by Tuesday we will be releasing a new breakdown of a year long or 6 months long breakdown of how much money was spent by the government. And for us, what we're trying to do is to put out the discrepancies that we've noticed, frivolous spendings, frivolous items, and also to correct some errors that we've seen from ministries, from departments, and from agencies. We've seen some money being paid into private accounts, which is beyond what it should be a normal threshold. I won't spill all the reports right now. I will let viewers wait for what we'll be releasing tomorrow. It's going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be, it's going to be eye-opening, to see how much money was spent by the government, and how much of that money went to private accounts. So for us, we're seeing how to correct some of these issues. And for journalists who are out there, they are also using the platform for investigative journalism, because you can clearly see it's not a matter of how much was proposed to be spent. It's a reality of how much was spent, at the end of the day. So for us, that's a groundbreaking idea. And for us, we are also seeing that we are the Open Treasury portal has served us well, so good, and we are trying to crawl all the data from the Open Treasury portal, because in the time past we've experienced where data just mysteriously disappears from these portals. But for our own portal, it's going to be there to thy kingdom come. So it's an idea for us to ensure that we are putting the government on their toes as to how these resources are being spent.
Absolutely awesome. We'll actually keep tabs on that one. Now let's divert a little bit and talk about Census 2023. 17 years after Nigeria set to hold Green National Census, at least we can finally quote a particular figure about after 17 years, instead of the estimates that we always have. It's either 100 million or 105 million, right? Really?
It's always been 200 million, if I'm not wrong. We've always quoted 200 million people. Yeah.
So at some point you hear that it's over 200 million. Some point you hear that it's 100 million. Some point 205 million. But is this actually a good step in the right direction? Are we census ready? 2023 census ready?
So that question is dicey, right? Is the country census ready? Yes, the country is census ready. But the question is this the right time? No, because it's it's more like a rushed affair now. The present government has less than 50 days to the end of his tenure, right? Which means that whatever you're doing right now might carry some level of suspicion from the people. You understand? And also people are asking, how do you intend to do this in a way that it carries the whole country in the same spectrum, right? But the response that we've seen has not really commensurate with the level of preparedness that the National Population Census has said they have put into place, right? And also hearing from the minister, which is Minister for State and Budget and National Planning, Honorable Prince Clem Agba, we said that a sum of money has been earmarked for the census, and has called on well-meaning Nigerians to also contribute to this process, which means that from that statement, there's an ideology that has given us a foresight to say even the government does not have all the funds to actualize this process. So the question is, why the rush? We just ended a very a very big process in the country, which is the elections, right? So the question is, how do we now harmonize all the data that we've gotten on the beavers, also on the national, which is the BVN numbers? How do we harmonize all this data to a single national data, right? And so the question is, what is different? There's not so much information out there, and that's why we are calling on the population census, national population census now, to find more time and find more, means and ways to properly communicate what they're intending to do in this census to Nigerians.
So I hear you make mention of the figures that were mentioned by the Minister for State Finance and Budget Planning, where he stated that 1.8 billion US dollars that will be required for the census, including post-census activities. So Nigerians have reacted, and reactions are still pouring in with regards to the 1.8 billion US dollars earmarked by the National Population Census for this year's 2023 population and housing census holding from May. Even when reactions with regards to the amount earmarked for the recently concluded elections, like you talked about, are still in the front burner, and yet some months ago, a particular lawmaker said that Nigeria is broke. That's few months ago. But yet, the way we call millions and billions doesn't look like we are anywhere close to being broke. Now, that aside, what are your thoughts with regards to the amount budgeted for Census 2023 exercise?
869 billion is not a joke, and that's a lot of money in any climb. 1.88 million dollars is not a joke, in any climb. So, sorry, 1.88 billion dollars, rather, not million dollars. 1.88 billion dollars is not a joke in any climb, right? So, at this point, I don't think Nigeria is buoyant enough to fund such activities, right? Because we must also put into consideration that the country is currently struggling under the auspices of the funds that has been borrowed by the country. Like we said earlier in this conversation, the country is currently servicing debt with 96% of its revenue, right? If you look at that figure, it goes to show that, we can't say that we are getting revenue to actually fund this census. It means that we are still borrowing money to actually fund this census. And as for us, Budget, EIE, we have written letters, even code. We have written letters to the National Population Census as towards, can you give us a breakdown of this money? Can you give us a breakdown of how you intend to spend this money?
And how is it coming along?
Give us a breakdown. Can you give us a breakdown of how you intend to actually raise these funds?
So how's that coming along? Are you getting responses?
We are not getting responses. I mean, that's our point of advocacy right now. If you ask Nigerians outside on the street today, are they aware that there's a particular national census coming on? The responses are low, right? So if you think of Lagos as a metropolitan city, where people should be very aware of what is going on, and you are not getting, the response you should get, what do you think of the states that are outside Lagos, right? So it shows that the awareness is very low, right? That's number one problem. Number two problem is it is still very close to the elections. That's number two. Number three is the funds that have been earmarked for this exercise. How are they being raised? How are these funds going to be repaid? If it is borrowed funds, what's the idea of how do we intend to repay it? Yes, we've heard of technology that is going to be utilized for the census. The question is, how do you intend to use this technology? How do you intend to, do, because we've also heard it's not just national census counting people, it's also housing census, counting all the houses across the country. So, we are aware of all these things because we deliberately paid attention to this whole process, right? But the average Nigerian doesn't even have an understanding of how the census is going to play out. Some people are asking, do they have to travel back to their respective states for them to be counted in their state, right? we've not gotten response to that. So, I mean, I'm sure that this conversation is going to go beyond our listeners and our viewers. We are asking questions around the funding for this census. The funds earmarked is quite a lot for us not to have perfect transparency and accountability systems for how these monies are going to be spent.
Now, if you talk about transparency and accountability process, we know that over time, the aftermath of each census carried out in Nigeria is usually follows with one argument or the other from one state or region or the other. And this is undoubtedly because of the revenue mobilization and disbursement. So do you see this
Yeah.
census exercise facing such even with the deployment of a digital technology?
So I don't like to be pessimistic. I like to be optimistic, which is I see that I'm trying to see the good in every action of the government, and I'm also trying to see the good in the idea of technology. But we saw how technology played out in the recently completed elections. We saw the fact that at some point everybody believed that technology is going to change the game, but we were disappointed somewhat, because of how technology was also utilized, especially in some part of the elections, right? In some part of the elections, it worked, and to be honest, deploying technology is very interesting. But the question is, who are the ones that are going to utilize this technology? So, I mean, I've always said technology does not solve the problem. It's the discipline behind the use of the technology that solves the problem. So, do I see these arguments coming up? I won't say no, and I won't say yes. But it all depends on how the discipline behind the use of the technology is forestalled. Is utilized, and also to ensure that these issues are forestalled, coming up in the end of the elections. So let's wait and see how these things are utilized.
Now, we also understand that for this year's census, people will not be asked about their ethnicity and religion owing to their sensitive nature. I'm sure you followed all that transpired during the elections, where these tools were used by most of the politicians and even the electorates: religion, ethnicity, tribe, social strata, and all. Because will this actually? I'm just thinking. I at some point I kept hearing people that I respect and trust so much use religion and ethnicity to further divide us, even as much as we're trying to get united. So will this move finally help close that gap and reduce this sentiments amongst us?
All right. So for me, I've always said that, as much as we continue to recognize as indigenes of a particular state in the country, then we are still not ready for the national cohesion of the name called Nigeria. We should always recognize as Nigerians first before anything, right? So I think that would help to close that gap that we've seen, and I think that would also help us to understand that we are first Nigerians before we are any tribe, before we are any connotation of religions or any beliefs that we must have grown up with, or that has modified our way of life. So, but then for me, I think for the government activities, we should always recognize as Nigerians. And when people talk about nepotism, right, it's because there's also an ideology of a long belief of recognizing as your state of origin. But I think if National Population Census can take that way forward, maybe it will help us in the long run. To be honest, I have not read so much research papers on how we can increase our national cohesion, but I believe that at this point in this country, national cohesion is very, very important, because a lot divides us than unites us at the moment.
I quite agree. Now let's divert a little bit and talk about fuel subsidy that seems to be the most popular thing in the lips of most Nigerians, even the young ones. What are your thoughts in that regard? We are still working towards having a functioning refinery, despite the amount of resources expended for turnaround maintenance. And we got that report of loans or maybe grants in the tune of $800 million budgeted and awaiting approval by the federal government as subsidy palliatives and marked to be shared amongst the 10 million most vulnerable Nigerians. Let's get your thoughts on that regard.
All right. My thoughts on that is that, number one, we are not a it's a disastrous thing to do. I'm trying to manage my personal expressions right now. It's just a disastrous thing to do. We can't continue borrowing for consumption. It's not going to lead us anywhere. If we want to borrow $800 million, right, in foreign currency, we should think of how that $800 million is going to repay itself by the time we start repaying these funds. And I know that yes, we have very poor and vulnerable people in Nigeria. I would be oblivious to that fact if I say I don't know. I know, but the question is, why don't we think of empowering these people so that they leave the space of being poor and vulnerable at all times? So yes, there's a social registrar that has all the names of the people, but the question is, how verifiable is this social registrar? That's number one. Number two is that we should, if we divert that $800 million into refineries to ensure that they are working, I want to believe that we would be better off it. But the question is, even the monies that have been put into our refineries, what has he given to us at this point? We've not seen so much in returns. So I think at the end of the day, borrowing to pay palliatives to people is a very wrong move, and I don't think anybody should approve that. To go forward, we have made our stand. You would also see another press statement tomorrow, marking all our issues with that. All the monies that have been borrowed to pay for social investment programs, we have not seen so much of its turnover in ensuring that Nigerians actually leave that space. The school feeding program is also a program that we've also looked at so well. Yes, conditional cash transfers work across the world, but we also must ensure that we have the resources to do those conditional transfers ourselves and not always borrowing money to get this done.
All right, before we let you go, I'm sure you must have been following the recent report or story on crude oil export and the summon of Abubakar Malami's Zainab Mohammed by the reps over 200 million US dollar whistleblower payment, as the House of Representatives threatened to arrest the Attorney General of the Federation and the Finance Minister due to their lack of cooperation in that case. Let's first get your thought on that.
Okay, so for me, I think I'll leave them to do their work. Let them give us their report. You are not convicted until you are convicted by the court of law. So, you are innocent until you are convicted. So, for me, I would like the National Assembly, the judge, whoever is assigned to the case, to do their work and let us see what exactly happened. But like I said, there are a lot of loopholes when it comes to transparency and accountability in Nigeria. And the whistleblower policy has been there to help us understand, what theft might be going on in internal offices when it comes to, the resources of the country. But then for me, I have not also seen how the whistleblowers have been rewarded in time past, because the COI fund showed us that whistleblowers were an endangered species. We have also seen some people who got fired from their jobs, in the government parastatal because they whistleblowed on some issues. So whistleblower protection must be a thing of our conversation. Last year, I had a conversation on that particular topic, whistleblowing in Nigeria. So for us, we must ensure that whistleblowers are very well protected. But let's see the outcome of this particular case from the government.
Let's see the outcome. What a fine way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Iyanu Bolarinwa. It's been a wonderful pleasure having this discussion with you.
Thank you very much. Technology showed us a little bit of pepper, but I think we enjoyed this whole conversation. Thank you for having me.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
All right, viewers. So we've been chatting with Iyanu Bolarinwa, and he is the acting lead, Open Government and Institutional Partnership, Budget Foundation. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. I will see you next time. Keep watching The Conversation, because you never know who my next guest will be and what I will be speaking of next. Till I come your way again from the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless you on yours, and God bless Nigeria. Have a good evening.